Alright, students, welcome to part 2 of the final exam review. Um, okay, so the numbers again jump around all over on this thing, so we're going to sort of jump right back in. We're going to go over the distance formula for this one. Now, a couple things about this, why I wanted to make the review for this especially is it doesn't say anywhere on here use the distance formula. Okay, so when it does say find the perimeter CDE, they want this triangle CDE, they want the length around all three sides. Okay, so let's talk about that. From C to D, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 boxes. Okay, so that's easy. These ones are going diagonal, so they're not whole boxes, it's sort of diagonal. So we have to use the distance formula to find those lengths. They're not along a straight line, they're along a diagonal. So we use the distance formula. Okay, so what we're going to do is we know CD was 4, and then we're going to have to find DE and EC. So we're going to have to find this length and this length. So distance formula twice on this one. Okay, so I have it redrawn already over here. It's not perfect, I apologize, but we already said this one was 4, that length. Oops. So we got that. So what we got to find is DE and EC. So first things first, the distance formula looks like this. It goes x2 minus x1, and you square that, y2 minus y1, and you square that. So I'm not going to go over again on where this came from. I have a separate video for that. But what we'll do is just go ahead and use it. So for our point, E was 2, negative 3, and D was 4, negative 5. And honestly, it doesn't matter that I put D before E, or D after E instead of before. What all this stuff is, if we call this point 1, and this is point 2, every point has an X and a Y. X and a Y. And for the first point, we put a little 1 and a 1. That reminds us that's for point 1. For the second point, we put a little 2 and a 2. That reminds us it's for point 2. Okay. After that, we just have to set up the formula correctly. So the distance is going to be x2 minus x1. So the x's subtract 4 minus 2, and then plus, and then the y subtract. So y2 minus y1. Now you got to be careful here. I said negative 5 minus a negative 3. So write all that out like that. Negative minus a negative. All right, we'll get to that right now. So 4 minus 2 is 2. All right, negative 5 minus a negative 3, those two negatives become a positive. So negative 5 plus 3, which would be negative 2. Now we still need to square both those. So that's going to be 4. Negative 2 squared will also be positive 4, and we'll get square root of 8. All right, so that's the distance from D to E. That's square root of 8. And if you want, you can change this to a decimal. For this problem, it doesn't really matter. On the quiz, on the final exam, if it's multiple choice, then if that's in the decimal, use your calculator. If it's like that, leave it like that. Okay. One quick side note, though. Some textbooks will do this. We won't usually do this for this problem, but technically you can simplify this into saying, hey, 8 is 4 times 2, because 4 times 2 would give you 8. And we can't simplify 2, but we can simplify square root of 4. That's just 2. And we still have this square root of 2. So you could put it like that. Okay. But most likely, since we're trying to find a perimeter, we wouldn't bother with that. We'd actually change it to decimal. All right. So all that's left for you to do is just repeat the distance formula on EC. Okay. And I'll do that right now. Okay, we're back. I paused it for a second, went ahead and did that calculation. So now you have the length of from E to C. We already had the length from E to D. So this is square root of 8 also. And I want to point this out real quickly. The perimeter then would be all three of these together. CD plus DE plus EC. That would be the perimeter. Let's move that up. Well, CD we started off with, we said was 4. This is square root of 8. This is square root of 8. One thing I want to point out is you cannot by any means say, oh, that's square root of 16. Radicals do not add like that. So you would have to say, well, there's one of these and one of these. There's 2 of these. So it's 2 square roots of 8. that would be your perimeter. And again, go ahead and change that on the calculator and get an approximate decimal answer for your perimeter. All right. Now, there's one other thing they want us to do on that problem. Okay. Later on, they ask for the area. All right. And they ask for ABF, ABF. And you're like, well, how do you find the area of that? Okay, there is a formula for area. There's one thing I gotta make sure is clear. There's the formula has to have a right angle, and they don't tell you this, but it's pretty much implied that this is a right angle here. Without that information, we do not have the proper formulas at this time to solve that. So, what you would want to do for a triangle, area is 1/2 base times height. That's 1/2 times the base times the height, or you can do base times height and divide by 2. That's the same as doing 1/2. Dividing by 2 is the same as 1/2. The key thing there is looking at whichever, if your triangle's tilted that way, that's fine. But you need to have a right 90-degree angle with a base, and the other side's the height. Third side's the hypotenuse. We do not need it for area. Okay, it's not going to come in for our formula. Okay, so for the next problem, then you're going to want to do distance formula again, that whole square rooty thingy, for the base, for the height, and then multiply it out and do 1/2. Okay, so I'll be honest with you, in the final exam there will be distance formula. I won't ask you to do it twice and do the area formula. That would be 3 separate questions. I would not put those all into one on the final exam. So, continue studying stuff for the final exam. Other things I will tell you, like I said, some of these they're going to be real easy. Just add them up. You want to try and nail those questions. Okay, no algebra required here, just basic adding. This is adding too, but with x's and stuff like that. So it's the same concept, but that's got more algebra in it. So the point is you want to nail these problems, absolutely nail them, and get them 100% correct. Spend more time on these problems, and use some scratch paper and take your time. And then if you get all those correct, you're doing great on the final. All right. A couple things. We will not do hypothesis conclusion. That will not be on there. Converse, inverse, contrapositive will not be on the final. So pretty much this little section right here, you can just completely ignore that. Okay, so if you didn't hear me mention that in class, you can completely ignore that stuff. All right. Only other thing is we'll come back and talk about some angle stuff on the final section here. All right. Good luck on the rest of your finals, and you're almost done.